The air of the Manhattan night, thick and perfumed by the faint scent of the Hudson River, seemed to vibrate in tune with the smooth jazz drifting through the ballroom. The black tie gala was taking place atop one of Midtown's most luxurious hotels, a glass and light aquarium with a panoramic view that made New York City look like a scattering of jewels across black velvet. It was the launch night for a renowned jeweler's new collection, and the atmosphere exuded power, money, and an almost aggressive elegance. Everything here was a performance, and Harrison, at the center of his own stage, knew this better than anyone. He should have been exultant. By his side, Tiffany was the personification of his success. A scarlet silk gown, as vibrant as a Hampton sunset, clung to her body, sculpted by hours in the gym and aesthetic treatments. The diamonds at her neck, a recent gift from Harrison, caught the light and flashed it back in blinding bursts. She laughed loudly, gestured with a rehearsed confidence, and circulated among the magnates and socialites as if she were born for it. Tiffany was his trophy, the living proof that he, Harrison, a man who started with very little, had won. "Darling, Senator Hayes is looking over here. Shall we go speak to him?" she whispered, her breath smelling of expensive champagne brushing his ear. "Of course," Harrison replied, an automatic smile forming on his lips, but his eyes were distant. A restlessness gnawed at him, an irritating dissonance between the perfection of the scene and the chaos in his mind. He felt like an actor in a play he himself had written, but whose lines had lost all meaning. He had everything: the real estate empire he built, the fearful respect of his competitors, the stunning woman everyone coveted. So why did he feel that emptiness, that persistent sense that something fundamental was missing? It was at that instant, as he prepared to greet the senator with a firm handshake, that the world seemed to stop. The doors of the private elevator opened at the far end of the ballroom. At first, the flow of conversation and laughter continued unchanged. But for Harrison, it was as if the sound had been cut. His eyes fixed on that entrance and an electric current ran through his body. It was her, Brooke, the woman he had methodically erased from his public life, the wife who, in his mind, represented the past he had fought so hard to overcome, the talented architect whose dreams he had dismissed as too small for the universe of ambition he now inhabited. Brooke, with her passion for community projects, for sustainable materials, for an architecture that served people, not ego. She was too real, and her reality did not fit into the fantasy of power he had constructed. Or so he thought. Because the woman who stepped out of that elevator was not the Brooke he held in his memory. The image he had of her was of an almost faded figure, in comfortable clothes and a perpetually tired look. The woman before him now was different. She wore a sand-colored linen jumpsuit, an impeccably cut piece that was both elegant and unpretentious. There were no diamonds, just a delicate silver necklace with a geometric pendant. Her hair, now shorter, framed a face that radiated a disconcerting serenity. But what truly struck him was not just the appearance, it was the way she moved, and what her body revealed. Beneath the fluid fabric of the jumpsuit, it was impossible not to notice the soft, unmistakable curve of her belly. Brooke was pregnant. The air fled Harrison's lungs. A wave of cold shock paralyzed him, followed by a heat that rose up his neck. Pregnant. The word echoed in his mind, opening an abyss beneath his feet. He knew, with the mathematical certainty of the months that had passed since their separation, that this child could not be his. The realization hit him like a punch. She moved with a calm that bordered on royalty, one hand resting casually on her abdomen, an instinctive and powerful gesture of protection. As if this environment, which once intimidated her, was now just another place, as if she didn't need anyone's approval here. The murmurs began, subtle as the buzzing of an insect. People who knew him, who knew their history, turned their heads, some with surprise, others with malicious curiosity. Brooke did not smile, did not wave, did not seek eye contact. She simply existed in that space, and her presence by itself was a declaration. "Harrison, who is that?" Tiffany's voice brought him back, sharp as a shard of glass. There was a tone of disdain in her question, but beneath it Harrison detected a note of alarm. She had noticed too. He couldn't answer. His heart pounded, a mixture of shock, jealousy, and a rage he didn't understand where it came from. He watched Brooke take a glass of water from a passing waiter, thanking him with a nod. Her every gesture was devoid of artifice. It was natural. And that naturalness, in that sea of poses and fake smiles, was the most magnetic thing in the room. "Harrison?" Tiffany insisted, her grip on his arm becoming painful. "I asked who that is. And why is she pregnant?" "No one," he spat the word, a monumental mistake. Because at that exact moment, as if sensing the weight of his gaze, Brooke turned. Her eyes, a deep hazel he knew so well, met his across the room. And she smiled. It was not a smile of hurt, nor of defiance. It was a brief, almost imperceptible smile, but it carried a universe of meaning. It was the smile of someone who knows a secret. The smile of someone who knows the end of the story. Harrison felt the floor disappear. She knew exactly the effect her presence and her pregnancy would cause. The ballroom seemed to shrink. The air grew thin. The smooth jazz, once a pleasant background sound, now seemed like an ironic soundtrack to his internal collapse. Something was about to happen. He didn't know what, but Brooke's appearance was the harbinger of a storm. He remembered, with uncomfortable clarity, the day he decreed her social exile. The last straw was at a similar event years ago. An important banker asked Brooke what she did, and she, with a sparkle in her eyes, began to describe a volunteer project for the revitalization of a park in a low-income neighborhood. The banker looked at her with polished boredom and walked away at the first opportunity. That night in the car, Harrison exploded. He said she made him look like an amateur, that she didn't understand the rules of the game, that her noble cause was an embarrassment. From that day on, he simply stopped inviting her. He convinced her and convinced himself that it was for her own good, but the truth was, he was hiding her. Brooke was the reminder of his origins, of the man he was before the money, and he wanted to erase that man. But now the woman he had hidden was here, at the center of his universe, pregnant with another man's child, and she didn't look lost at all. On the contrary, it seemed he was the one who had lost the map. "She's heading toward the bar," Tiffany hissed, her voice tense. Harrison swallowed hard. Brooke walked slowly, not toward him, but toward the large marble bar that dominated one of the walls. People parted, not out of obligation, but with a deference he didn't understand. Some greeted her with a nod, a discreet smile. How? How did they know her? Brooke stopped a few feet away from him, her back turned, waiting for the bartender. The cut of the jumpsuit highlighted her posture, and the curve of her pregnancy was visible and proud. His silence was so profound that he could hear the ice clinking in someone's nearby glass. He needed to say something, to regain control, but before he could formulate a thought, a grave and respected voice cut through the air. "Brooke, so good to see you here. I was hoping you'd come." Harrison turned and felt his stomach drop. It was Franklin Vance, one of the most renowned architects in the country, an icon, a man whose opinion could build or destroy careers. Franklin was known for his reclusive temperament and his disdain for social events like this one. Harrison had spent years trying to get close to him, without success. And now Franklin Vance was smiling at Brooke as if they were old friends. "Franklin," she replied, turning with a naturalness that shocked him. "I wouldn't miss your book launch for anything." "Book? What book?" Harrison searched his memory. The event was for a jeweler. "You're too kind," Franklin said, and then gestured toward a small reserved lounge. "Come, I want to introduce you to some people from the West Coast. They were fascinated by the photos of the Harlem project you sent me. The use of reclaimed wood as a bioclimatic element. Brilliant. Simple and brilliant." Harrison's world tilted dangerously. Harlem project? Reclaimed wood? What were they talking about? Brooke, the woman whose projects he called irrelevant dreams, was being praised by Franklin Vance. Tiffany, noticing her husband's pallor, squeezed his arm. "Harrison, what is going on?" He didn't answer. He was paralyzed, watching Brooke being led by Franklin Vance into the most exclusive and intellectual circle of the party. And then, as if the night couldn't get any more surreal, another figure materialized beside her. He was younger, perhaps in his early 30s, with a vibrant energy and an intelligent gaze. He wore a light linen suit, no tie, a style that was both casual and incredibly sophisticated. He didn't have Harrison's fortune or Franklin's renown, but he possessed something the other two didn't, a lightness, a contagious joy. Brooke turned to him, and the smile she gave him was different from all the others. It was an intimate smile, full of complicity. "Liam," she said, and the name sounded like music. The man, Liam, took her hand and kissed it softly, a gesture of affection that was anything but formal. But his gaze dropped for an instant to Brooke's belly, and he rested his other hand there, with a familiarity and tenderness that made Harrison's blood boil. "I escaped a terribly boring conversation about the stock market to find you," Liam said, his voice carrying a charming, easy-going cadence. "I figured you two might need rescuing." "You two?" The phrase hammered in Harrison's head. That was the father. Brooke laughed, a crystalline sound Harrison hadn't heard in years. "My hero," she joked, placing her hand over his, which still rested on her belly. The glass in Harrison's hand trembled. The ground was gone. Harrison was in free fall. Brooke wasn't just surviving without him. She was flourishing. Pregnant. In a secret garden he never knew existed, watered by people he always wanted to impress, and in the company of a man who made her laugh like that. A man who was the father of her child. She didn't look back. Not once. And that indifference, combined with the image of her pregnant and happy with another man, was the hardest slap Harrison had ever taken in his life. The rest of the night turned into torture for Harrison. The music, the conversations, the clinking of glasses, everything merged into an irritating white noise that served only as a backdrop to the drama unfolding in his mind. He tried to compose himself, forced a smile for Senator Hayes, exchanged banalities with a Wall Street investor. But his eyes, like uncontrolled magnets, always returned to the same spot in the ballroom, to the reserved lounge where Brooke, Franklin Vance, and Liam were talking. He saw the animations, the gestures, the way Franklin listened to Brooke with an attention that he, Harrison, had never given her. And he saw Liam, always close, his hand sometimes on her shoulder, sometimes resting lightly on the small of her back, a silent, proud guardian of her and the life she carried. Tiffany, beside him, had turned into a statue of contained fury. Her smile was frozen, her eyes flashed, and her fingers, adorned with expensive rings, gripped her champagne flute so tightly that Harrison feared the crystal would shatter. She was not foolish. She knew that Brooke's presence, especially pregnant, was a social bomb. The ex-wife, who should have been in some obscure corner of the city, reappeared not as a pathetic figure but as a rising star, pregnant by another, and surrounded by people Tiffany could barely get her assistant to schedule a meeting with. It was a direct affront to her status, to her place as Harrison's wife. "Are you just going to stand there staring at her like an idiot?" she hissed, taking advantage of a moment when they were alone near the balcony. "People are talking. They're looking at us and then at her. You're making us look like fools." "Be quiet, Tiffany," he replied, his voice rough without taking his eyes off her. "Be quiet. Harrison, that woman, your ex, shows up pregnant by another man at an event like this, and you want me to be quiet. She's doing this on purpose, to humiliate you, to humiliate me." Harrison finally turned to her, his eyes bloodshot. "You think this is about you? Do you really think the world revolves around you?" The cruelty in his own voice surprised him. He was transferring all the frustration and bewilderment he felt onto Tiffany. Tiffany recoiled, shocked. "How dare you speak to me like that?" A wave of something he hadn't felt in years washed over him. It wasn't just anger or jealousy. It was an acute sense of loss. The loss not of a woman, but of an entire life he could have had, and had discarded as if it were worthless. He couldn't take it anymore. "I need air," he told Tiffany, and before she could protest, he walked away, circling the ballroom, his heart pounding in his chest. His plan was to go to the restroom, splash water on his face, try to put his thoughts in order, but his feet betrayed him. Instead of turning toward the hallway, he continued straight, toward the balcony, toward them. He stopped a few yards away, his hands in his pockets to hide the tremor. Brooke and Liam didn't notice him immediately, absorbed in their own bubble of happiness. "Do you think he'll look like his grandfather?" Liam asked, his voice full of tenderness, as he stroked Brooke's belly. "Definitely, the same stubborn nose," she replied, laughing. "But I hope he gets your eyes, and your talent for not taking life too seriously." "Hey, I take life very seriously. I take making you happy very seriously, for example, and making sure this little guy has the coolest nursery in New York, even if it's made of reclaimed wood and recycled plastic like you want." The mention of her project, said with such affection and admiration, was like salt in Harrison's wound. He remembered how he used to ridicule those very ideas. "Harrison!" Brooke's voice, now devoid of laughter, brought him back to reality. She had seen him. Her expression became neutral, almost cold. Liam straightened up, his hand still on her waist, his body subtly positioning itself between her and Harrison, a human shield. "Brooke," Harrison said, his voice coming out hoarser than he intended. I didn't know you were coming. It's an event open to the collaborators of the new community center. Franklin's book is being sold here, and part of the jeweler's proceeds tonight will go to the project," she explained, her voice calm and informative, as if speaking to a stranger. "I'm one of the lead architects. I thought you knew." He didn't know. He had no idea. He was so immersed in his own world of concrete and profit that he didn't realize she was literally building a new world for herself, right under his nose. "No, I didn't know," he admitted. His eyes dropped to her belly and he couldn't help himself. You look well." "I am great," she replied, and the slight smile that accompanied the phrase made it clear that her happiness did not depend on his approval. Liam, sensing the tension, extended his free hand to Harrison. "Liam Sampaio," he introduced himself, his voice firm, his handshake secure. Harrison shook his hand, a mechanical gesture. "Harrison Bastos." "I know who you are," Liam said without hostility, just stating a fact. His gaze was direct, intelligent. There was no intimidation, but there was also no submission. He was there as an equal. The silence that followed was broken by Tiffany, who approached like a panther, her red dress a sign of danger. "Darling, is everything all right? You disappeared," she said, linking her arm through Harrison's and glaring at Brooke. "Everything's fine, Tiffany. I was just—" "Greeting Brooke," Harrison said, suddenly feeling ridiculous. Brooke looked at Tiffany, then at Harrison, and an expression of understanding, almost pity, crossed her face. She knew exactly what was happening. She saw Tiffany's insecurity, Harrison's confusion, and she was above it all. "It was good to see you, Harrison," she said, her voice soft but definitive. "Enjoy the evening." She turned to Liam. "Shall we grab some sparkling water? I suddenly have a craving." "Of course, my love." "Whatever you want," Liam replied, the term "my love" sounding so natural that it hurt Harrison's ears. They walked away, hand in hand, leaving Harrison and Tiffany standing on the balcony. He watched them blend into the crowd, laughing and talking, completely oblivious to the storm they had left behind. "So that was her," Tiffany said, her voice low and venomous. "The simple ex-wife. She didn't look simple at all, Harrison. And she certainly didn't look unhappy." Harrison didn't answer. He just kept staring at the spot where Brooke had disappeared. The image of her, pregnant, smiling at the man she loved, was burned into his mind. The woman he discarded hadn't just moved on. She had rebuilt herself from the ruins he left, and the edifice she erected was stronger, more beautiful and truer than any skyscraper he could ever build. And for the first time in his life of ruthless achievements, Harrison felt completely and irremediably poor. The drive home was an exercise in hostile silence. Harrison sped his Mercedes down the deserted avenues of the Upper East Side, the streetlights passing like golden blurs. Beside him, Tiffany was a statue of fury. She didn't say a word, but her rigid posture, clenched jaw, and the way she stared fixedly at the dark ocean spoke louder than any scream. The scent of her expensive perfume, mixed with the car's leather, felt suffocating. For the first time, Harrison felt no desire when he looked at her. He felt a deep irritation, as if she were just another noisy, unnecessary accessory in his life. When they arrived at the duplex penthouse on Fifth Avenue, the tension exploded. As soon as Harrison closed the door, Tiffany turned to him, her eyes flashing. Are you going to explain what that was, or are you going to keep acting like a coward? She snapped, tearing off her diamond earrings and throwing them onto the marble coffee table with a dry thud. What was what, Tiffany? I already told you. It was nothing, he lied, loosening his tie, feeling it tighten around his neck. Nothing? She laughed, a high, humorless sound. Harrison, I'm not one of your idiot interns who believes everything you say. Your ex-wife, the woman you always described as a nobody, an unambitious dreamer, shows up at one of the most important events of the year, pregnant by another man, being fawned over by the most famous architect in the country, and you tell me it was nothing. You went pale. You looked like you'd seen a ghost, and the way you were looking at her, and her belly. Enough, he yelled, his voice echoing through the double-height living room. I don't want to talk about it. Oh, you don't? Well, I do, she advanced, her finger pointing. You made a fool of me in front of all those people. Everyone saw. The humiliated ex-wife who rises from the ashes, pregnant and happy, while the current one looks like an abandoned trophy. Was that the image you wanted to project? The only person worried about image here is you, he retorted, cruelty becoming his only defense. You only care about what others think, about the photos in the society column, about the sparkle of the diamonds. You never truly cared about me. The accusation hit her hard. Tiffany's eyes filled with tears of rage. Me? I dedicated myself to you. I built an image by your side. I helped you enter circles you never would have entered alone. And this is how you thank me. Drooling over the woman you yourself discarded. He had no answer, because deep down he knew she was right. Tiffany was a business partner as much as a lover. She was a fundamental piece in the power game he played. But that night, seeing Brooke's genuine, unpretentious happiness, Harrison realized that the game he was playing was empty. And the main piece, Tiffany, suddenly seemed like plastic. Without saying another word, he turned his back and climbed the floating staircase to the second floor, locking himself in his study. He left Tiffany alone in the living room, with her rage and her diamonds. He poured himself a double whiskey, the amber liquid gleaming under the designer lamp. He sat in his Italian leather armchair and stared at the panoramic view of the dark ocean. But he didn't see the sea. He saw Brooke. He saw her smile for Liam. He saw Liam's hand on her belly. He saw the sparkle in her eyes when talking about her projects. The word reclaimed wood, spoken by Franklin Vance, echoed in his mind. Such a simple element, so community-focused, so Brooke. He always thought it was tacky, the stuff of idealistic architects who didn't understand the market. And now, that same word, in the mouth of an icon, sounded like brilliant. An obsession began to form in his mind. He needed to understand. He needed to know everything. What was that Harlem project? Who was this Liam guy? How had she, the woman he judged incapable of navigating the real world, built such a powerful network of contacts? He opened his laptop, the screen's glow illuminating his face. His fingers, accustomed to typing contracts and spreadsheets, now flew across the keyboard in a frantic search. He typed her name. Brooke Miller, architect. The first results were old, linked to small firms where she had worked early in her career. But then he found it. A website, simple, elegant, with her name in a clean typeface. The portfolio was impressive. There were residential projects, yes, but the focus was elsewhere. There was the Harlem Green project with photos of a community center under construction using shipping containers, reclaimed wood, and green roofs that created light and ventilation. There were blueprints, renders, testimonials from residents. It was a real, tangible, and incredibly beautiful project. He clicked on the About tab. A professional photo of Brooke smiled at him. The text described her philosophy: architecture as a tool for social transformation, building not just structures but dignity. The phrase hit him. Dignity, a word he rarely used. And then at the bottom of the page, in the Partners section, he saw the logos. Franklin Vance's foundation was there, as was a well-known environmental NGO. And finally, a name that made his blood run cold. Sampaio and Sons Sustainable Ventures. Liam's name. Harrison clicked the link. Liam's company website was modern, focused on ecological construction, social impact investments. Liam was the heir to a traditional Boston family, but who had broken with his father's conventional business to create his own company with a new philosophy. He wasn't just a boyfriend. He was an entrepreneur in the same field as Harrison, but with a diametrically opposed worldview. He wasn't a competitor in terms of volume or profit, but he was a competitor in something much more fundamental, in purpose. Harrison spent the entire night there, immersed in that parallel universe Brooke had built. He read articles about her in architecture blogs, saw photos of her at sustainability events, watched a short video of a lecture she gave at a university. In it, Brooke spoke with a contagious passion, explaining how architecture could improve people's lives, how a well-thought-out project could bring safety, comfort, and beauty to those who had nothing. She was not the shy, insecure woman he remembered. She was a leader, a visionary. The sun was already rising over the ocean when Harrison finally closed his laptop. The whiskey in the glass was untouched. He felt no anger, no jealousy. He felt something much worse, a corrosive admiration. A deep envy not of her success, but of her authenticity. She had managed to be successful by being exactly who she was, the person he had rejected. He stood up, his body stiff from the sleepless night. He went downstairs and found Tiffany asleep on the sofa, her face smeared with mascara. A pang of guilt hit him, but it was quickly replaced by a new and dangerous thought. I lost her, but maybe there's still a way. He didn't know what that way was. Win her back? It seemed impossible. She was pregnant with another man's child, a man who seemed to adore her, but the idea of simply accepting defeat, of watching her flourish from afar, was unbearable. The predatory instinct that had made him a millionaire now turned to a new target. He no longer wanted the concrete empire. He wanted the woman who built with dignity. In the days that followed, Harrison's obsession only grew. He became a ghost in Brooke's life. He used his contacts to find out more about the Harlem project. He discovered that the work was at a crucial stage, but that one of the main sponsors, a foreign company, had backed out at the last minute, leaving a hole in the budget. The information made his negotiator's heart race. A weakness, a doorway. He began to frequent places he knew she might be. Cafes in Brooklyn near her office, bookstores in the village she loved. He didn't approach her. He just watched from afar, like a hunter studying his prey. He saw her with her increasingly large belly, her face sometimes tired, but always with that aura of determination. He saw Liam pick her up at the end of the day, always with a smile and a kiss. Each scene was torture, but it also fueled his determination. Tiffany, noticing the change in his behavior, the distance, the vague look, tried everything. Nights of passion, surprise dinners, threats, tears. Nothing worked. Harrison was physically present, but his mind, his soul was elsewhere. "You're sick, Harrison. Obsessed," she said one night, after another frustrated attempt to connect with him. "She left you. She's with someone else. She's having a baby with him. It's over. Why can't you accept it?" "You don't understand," he replied, looking out the window at the city lights. Money. It was the language he mastered. And maybe, just maybe, it was the only language that could buy him a second chance. Not to win back her love, he knew it was too soon for that, but to buy what he needed most at that moment, her time, her attention, a seat at the table of her new life. Harrison's plan was audacious, bordering on unethical, but in his mind, distorted by obsession, it seemed like the only logical move. He couldn't compete with Liam in the field of affection or shared purpose, but he could compete where no one else could, in raw financial power. The Harlem Community Center project was Brooke's Achilles heel, the point where her passion and ideals met the harsh reality of lack of resources, and that was exactly where he would strike. He spent a week mobilizing his team. He had his lawyers and financial analysts thoroughly investigate the project's structure, the responsible NGO, the existing contracts, and most importantly, the vacuum left by the sponsor who had withdrawn. He discovered that the amount needed to finalize the work and ensure the center's operation for 2 years was significant. But for him, it was little more than pocket change, the equivalent of what he had spent on the last renovation of the penthouse. The strategy was designed with a general's coldness. He would not make an anonymous donation. He would not contact the NGO directly. That would be too easy, too impersonal. He needed the gesture to lead him directly to her. He would create a situation where Brooke would be forced to meet him, to negotiate with him, to acknowledge his power. He orchestrated everything through an intermediary, a well-known lawyer in the non-profit sector, instructing him to make an irresistible proposal to the NGO managing the project. The Bastos Foundation, a philanthropic entity Harrison barely used, maintaining it only for tax benefits, offered to fully cover the budget deficit and even create a maintenance fund for the following years. The offer was a lifeboat, a miraculous solution to a problem that was keeping Brooke and the entire team awake at night. There was, however, one condition, a single insurmountable condition. Harrison demanded that the final negotiation and contract signing be done personally with the project's lead architect, Brooke Miller. The news reached Brooke like thunder on a clear day. She was in a tense meeting with the NGO's board, discussing cuts, postponements, and the real possibility of the work stopping indefinitely, when the director received the call from the intermediary. The initial euphoria upon hearing about the proposal quickly gave way to a cold apprehension when the condition was revealed. The Bastos Foundation, Brooke repeated, the name sounding like poison in her mouth. Harrison's Foundation. The very same, confirmed the director, a middle-aged man whose face was etched with worry. The proposal is unbelievable, Brooke. It solves all our problems. But this requirement, it's strange. He wants to meet with you, and only you, to finalize the details. The silence in the meeting room was heavy. Everyone there knew, even if superficially, her history with Harrison. They knew the separation had been painful. The intention behind that condition was transparent as glass. It wasn't philanthropy. It was a power play. "It's a trap," said Liam, who was participating in the meeting as a project partner. His voice was calm, but his eyes, fixed on Brooke, showed contained fury. "He's using the project, the dream of an entire community, to get to you. It's low, it's manipulative. It's exactly like him." "I know," she whispered, her hand instinctively going to her belly, which now, in the 8th month of pregnancy, was a prominent and constant presence. The baby moved as if sensing her anguish. "You don't have to do this," Liam continued, taking her hand across the table. "We can refuse. We'll figure it out. We'll look for other ways, even if it takes longer." Brooke looked at his face, grateful for his unconditional support. But then she looked at the NGO director, at the project blueprints spread across the table, at the photos of the community children who were already participating in workshops at the construction site. That project was no longer just hers. It belonged to hundreds of people. To delay it, or worse, risk losing it because of her wounded pride, her unresolved past, seemed like a selfishness she couldn't afford. "No," she said, her voice gaining firmness. "We can't refuse. It's not about me, it's about them." She lifted her chin, a cold determination taking over her expression. "I will meet him, but it will be on my terms." The meeting was scheduled for the end of the week, not at Harrison's luxurious office, nor at an expensive restaurant, but at the construction site itself, in Harlem. It was Brooke's demand. She wanted him to see, with his own eyes, what was at stake. She wanted him to step in the dust, feel the heat, hear the sound of the community around him. She wanted him to leave his ivory tower and face the reality his money was about to touch. Harrison arrived in his armored Mercedes, which looked like a UFO landed on the narrow, vibrant streets of the community. He got out of the car, his impeccable linen suit looking like an inadequate disguise. He felt the curious glances of the residents, the sound of hip-hop coming from a nearby window, the smell of home cooking in the air. It was a universe light years away from his penthouse in Manhattan. Brooke was waiting for him at the entrance to the site, wearing a white safety helmet, work boots, and a light dress that didn't hide her advanced pregnancy. Beside her, imposing and silent, was Liam, also wearing a helmet. His presence was non-negotiable. "Harrison," she greeted him, her voice professional, without any trace of emotion. "Thank you for coming." "Brooke," he replied, trying to maintain his composure, but the sight of her, pregnant and powerful in her own territory, was disconcerting. He nodded briefly to Liam, who just watched him with eyes that didn't hide his distrust. "Before we talk about the contract, I want to show you the project," she said, and without waiting for an answer, began to walk through the construction. It was torture for Harrison. Brooke guided him through every inch of the construction, explaining every detail with a contagious technical passion. She showed how the reclaimed wood panels would allow for cross-ventilation, reducing the need for air conditioning. She showed the rainwater harvesting system on the roof. She showed the space that would be the library, the dance studio, the small theater. She didn't speak to him as an ex-wife, but as the chief architect, owner of the project, treating him like any other investor. Liam remained a step behind, silent, but his presence was a constant reminder. He was the one who held Brooke's arm when she climbed a step, who offered her a bottle of water, who looked at her with an adoration that hurt Harrison's eyes. Finally, they reached an unfinished terrace with a surprising view of the community and the Hudson River in the distance. There, a table and 3 chairs had been improvised. "Now we can talk," Brooke said, sitting down with some difficulty, helped by Liam. Harrison sat across from them, feeling cornered. The game was not going as he had planned. He wanted to be in control. He wanted her to come to him vulnerable. Instead, he was on her territory, being treated with a cold politeness that was worse than any hostility. "My foundation's proposal is clear," he began, trying to regain his businessman's tone. "We cover all costs. In return, I only want the standard recognition, the foundation's name on the sponsor's plaque. And a personal meeting with me," Brooke completed, her eyes fixed on his. "Why, Harrison? Why this condition?" The direct question caught him by surprise. I wanted to see the project up close, to understand the impact of the investment." Brooke let out a short, humorless laugh. "You never cared about the impact of anything, except on your bank statement. Be honest just once." The pressure in Harrison's chest increased. Liam watched him, his face a mask of neutrality, which was even more intimidating. "Fine," Harrison said, surrendering. "I wanted to talk to you. I needed to talk to you." "About what?" she insisted. "About us," he whispered, the words sounding pathetic in that environment. Liam shifted in his chair, his body tensing, but Brooke placed a hand on his arm, a silent request for him to let her handle the situation. "There is no us anymore, Harrison," she said, her voice soft but with the firmness of the concrete around them. "You destroyed us years ago when you decided I wasn't good enough for your world, when you hid me, when you diminished me, when you made me feel invisible. I was wrong," he said, the confession coming out with difficulty. "I was an idiot. I didn't see who you were becoming." "No," she corrected him. "You didn't see who I always was. I haven't changed, Harrison. The world around me changed because I stopped waiting for your permission to exist in it." She took a deep breath, her hand on her belly. "I moved on. I built a new life. I found a love that doesn't ask me to be smaller, but encourages me to be bigger. I'm going to have a son." She leaned forward, her eyes locked on his. "So let's be clear. I'm here, negotiating with you, not for me. I'm here for every child who will use that library, for every teenager who will learn to dance in that studio. Your foundation's money is welcome, but you need to understand, that's all you're buying, the right to have your name on a plaque. You are not buying my time, my attention, and much less a second chance. That door is closed, Harrison, and it's locked." Every word was a blow. Harrison felt the air leave him. He, the great negotiator, the man who always got what he wanted, was being put in his place brutally and definitively. He looked at Liam, who was now staring at him openly, not with triumph, but with a kind of pity. And that was the worst of all. Harrison had won the negotiation. His name would be on the plaque. But he had lost the war so completely, so humiliatingly, that the money in his account suddenly felt utterly useless. Harrison signed the contract. His name, or rather his foundation's name, would be engraved on a metal plaque at the entrance of the community center. He had won. But as he left Harlem, leaving behind the smell of dust and the image of Brooke and Liam side by side, he felt like the most defeated man in the world. Her words echoed in his head. "That door is closed. And it's locked." For a man like Harrison, accustomed to breaking down any door with the key of money, that statement was not an end but a challenge. The humiliation suffered at the construction site did not cure his obsession. On the contrary, it metastasized. The desire to have her back mixed with a darker, more dangerous feeling, the need to prove she was wrong. He needed to convince himself and her that the happiness she displayed was fragile, an illusion. He needed to demonstrate that Liam, with his ideals of sustainability and his love that encourages, was a fraud, or at the very least, inadequate. That, in the end, the strength, power, and security that he, Harrison, represented were the only solid values in an unstable world. He began a new phase of his hunt, more subtle and venomous. He used his resources not to approach but to investigate. He hired the best private investigators in New York, men he normally used to conduct a thorough investigation of competing companies before a hostile takeover. The order was clear. Find out everything about Liam Sampaio. His business, his finances, his personal life. Every debt, every mistake, every secret. While waiting for the results, he became a ghostly presence on the fringes of Brooke's life. He knew he could no longer approach her directly, so he began to infiltrate her circle. He started frequenting the same cultural events, the same art exhibitions, the same architectural circles he once despised. He made generous donations to the same causes she supported, ensuring his name was always mentioned. He didn't speak to her, but he made sure she saw him. He wanted her to feel his presence, a constant reminder that he was still there, watching, waiting. Liam and Brooke noticed the movement. "He's circling us," Liam said one night while assembling the crib in the baby's room. "He's like a shark circling its prey. He doesn't attack, he just waits for us to get tired to make a mistake." "He won't get anything," Brooke replied, her voice firm as she folded the tiny cotton clothes. But inside, a seed of apprehension began to sprout. She knew Harrison's tenacity. She knew he didn't give up. And the pregnancy, now in its final stretch, made her more vulnerable, more tired. The first bomb came a few weeks later. The detective's report landed on Harrison's desk. Liam's personal life was impeccable. No scandal, no betrayal. But his business was a house of cards. Sampaio and Sons Sustainable Ventures was a company driven more by passion than by capital. Liam had invested almost his entire inheritance in green technologies and high-risk, low-return financial projects. He had debts, significant debts with suppliers, and worse, a large bank loan with fragile guarantees. Harrison smiled for the first time in weeks, a cold, predatory smile. He had found the crack in the hero's armor. His next move was surgically cruel. Harrison began buying Liam's company debts. Using shell companies and intermediaries, he acquired the debts from the suppliers. Then, through his vast power of influence in the financial market, he approached the bank that held Liam's main loan. Harrison didn't want the money, he wanted the leverage. Within a month, he secretly became Liam Sampaio's largest creditor. "He can't do this," Brooke said, feeling a growing panic. "In his world he can," Liam replied, his voice full of bitter exhaustion. "He doesn't play to compete, he plays to destroy." Harrison knew it was time for checkmate. He scheduled a meeting, not with Liam but with Brooke. The message sent by his lawyer was short and brutal. Subject: the future of Liam Sampaio's company. I suggest you attend. Alone. This time, Brooke had no choice. The future of the man she loved, the father of her child, was at stake. The meeting was at a discreet restaurant in the village, a place Harrison chose for its neutrality. He arrived first, impeccable in his suit, the calm expression of someone who knows all the cards are in their hands. Brooke arrived minutes later. The pregnancy weighed on her movements, and there were dark circles under her eyes. The serenity she had displayed at the construction site had been replaced by visible apprehension. "What do you want, Harrison?" she asked, sitting down and dismissing the menu with a gesture. "An honest conversation," he said, savoring the moment. "I warned you, didn't I? The world isn't made of reclaimed wood and good intentions, it's made of power, of money. And your hero has neither." He then laid out his game. He revealed that he was the holder of the debts, that with one phone call he could bankrupt Liam's company, destroy his reputation, and leave him in a financial situation from which he might never recover. "Why?" she whispered, her face pale with shock. "Why this cruelty?" "It's not cruelty. It's reality," he said, leaning across the table. "I'm offering you a way out, a chance to protect the father of your child, to guarantee a future for yourselves." "What way out?" she asked, her voice trembling. And then he made his proposal. The proposal he had been rehearsing in his mind for weeks. "Leave him," Harrison said, his voice low and intense. "Leave him. Come back to me. I'll take over his debts. I'll forget them. I'll give him a gift, capital, so he can start over, far from here. And you and your son will have everything. The security, the comfort, the power. Everything I can offer. Everything he never can." Brooke stared at him, incredulous. The monstrosity of the proposal left her breathless. He wasn't offering love. He was offering a commercial transaction. Her life, her son's life, in exchange for Liam's ruin. "You are a monster," she said, her voice choked with revulsion. "I am a winner," he corrected her. "And I want you and your son to be on the winning side. Think about it, Brooke. Think about your son. What kind of life will he have with a bankrupt father, a failure? With me, he'll have the world." He leaned back in his chair, confident. He had created an impossible dilemma. If she stayed with Liam, she would condemn him to ruin. If she left him, she would save him, but condemn herself to a life alongside a man she despised. In his sick mind, he believed that maternal instinct, the desire to protect her offspring, would make her choose security. He was saving her from her own wrong choice. Brooke stood up, the chair scraping on the floor. People in the restaurant looked over. She placed both hands on the table, her body trembling with anger and pain. "You can buy debts, Harrison. You can buy companies. You can buy people like Tiffany. But you cannot buy dignity. You cannot buy love. And you will never ever buy my son." She looked at him with a contempt so deep, so absolute, that he felt a chill. A man who needs to destroy the happiness of others to feel powerful is not a winner. He is the poorest person I have ever met. Without saying another word, she turned and walked out of the restaurant, leaving Harrison alone with his empty victory. He had cornered his prey, but instead of surrendering, she had looked him in the eye and called him out for what he was. And in the silence that followed, the certainty of his victory began to feel frighteningly like the bitter taste of final defeat. Brooke left the restaurant and got into the first taxi she saw, her body trembling, the tears she held back in front of Harrison now flowing freely. The brutality of his proposal, the way he used her son as a piece in his sick game, had violated her in a way that neither the separation nor the public humiliation had managed. He didn't want to win her back. He wanted to possess her, to break her, to prove that she couldn't exist without him. Arriving home, she found Liam in the living room, pacing back and forth, his face a mask of anxiety. He hugged her the instant he saw her, feeling the tremors in her body. "What did he want? What did he do?" Liam asked, his voice urgent. Between sobs, Brooke told him everything. The purchase of the debts, the threat of bankruptcy, the monstrous proposal. With every word, Liam's face transformed, worry giving way to a cold, silent fury. When she finished, he held her tight, his chin resting on the top of her head. "That man has no limits," he whispered. "But he won't win. I won't let him." That night, they didn't sleep. Sitting on the balcony of their small apartment in Brooklyn with the city at their feet, they talked like never before. Liam, for the first time, let go of his pride and admitted the depth of his financial problems. Brooke, in turn, reaffirmed her choice, her faith in him and the love they had built. "I don't care about the money, Liam. I don't care if we have to live in a smaller place, if we have to start over from scratch," she said, her hand on his. "I chose you. I choose our life, with or without a company, with or without debts. I choose the father of my son." Her words were the strength Liam needed. At that moment, he understood that Harrison could take his money, but he couldn't touch what was truly valuable. The decision was made there under the stars. They wouldn't play Harrison's game. They would flip the board. The next day, Liam called a meeting with all his employees and, with brutal honesty, laid out the company's situation and the hostile acquisition of its debts by an anonymous competitor. he didn't mention Harrison's name. Instead of giving up, he made a radical proposal. To transform Sampaio and Sons into a cooperative, he would relinquish share control, dividing ownership with the employees who wanted to stay and fight. It was a crazy plan, meaning he would lose control of his own business, but it was the only way to protect it from a single creditor. Meanwhile, Brooke, driven by a righteous fury, decided she would no longer remain silent. She sought out Franklin Vance. She told him not only about Harrison's financial maneuver, but about the context, the obsession, the blackmail, the use of the social project as bait. Franklin, a man who valued ethics and integrity above all else, was horrified. That's not business. That's a vendetta, and to use a community project for it is vile. What happened next was an avalanche Harrison didn't foresee. Franklin Vance, with his immense prestige, started making phone calls. He spoke with influential columnists, with other architects, with businessmen in the cultural sector. He didn't expose all the intimate details, but he painted a clear picture. A major real estate developer, known for his aggressive tactics, was trying to sabotage, for personal reasons, a vital social project and the company of a young, sustainable entrepreneur. The story, even without Harrison's name explicitly mentioned at first, began to circulate. The real estate shark versus the idealistic architect. The narrative was perfect. The press loved it. Within days, the story gained traction, and Harrison's name began to be whispered, then spoken, and finally printed. The plaque with his foundation's name in Harlem, which was supposed to be a symbol of his power, suddenly became a symbol of his hypocrisy. Harrison, isolated in his penthouse, watched his world crumble. Business partners called, worried about the negative publicity. Tiffany, who finally left him after the final humiliation, gave a veiled interview to a gossip magazine, talking about what it was like to live with a powerful but emotionally unstable man. The image he had spent his whole life building was falling apart. The final defeat, however, was silent. A week later, Brooke went into labor. Liam was by her side the entire time, and on a rainy morning, little Caleb was born, healthy and strong. The news reached Harrison through a note in the online society column, with a photo of Liam and Brooke leaving the hospital, she in his arms, exhausted but radiant, he holding the baby with infinite care. The image was the personification of everything he had lost, everything he had tried to destroy and failed. At that moment, staring at the photo on his cell phone screen, the castle of his obsession finally collapsed. There was no anger, no desire for revenge, just an immense cold emptiness. He had played his dirtiest game and lost spectacularly. Not only did he fail to get Brooke back, but he pushed her even further away, solidifying her union with Liam and uniting an entire community of influential people against him. Months later, Harrison was in his study looking out at the city. Liam's company, now a cooperative, had survived. With the support generated by Harrison's negative publicity, new investors and partners emerged, drawn by the story of resilience and the company's purpose. The community center in Harlem was inaugurated with a big party, and the plaque with the Bastos Foundation name was there, an ironic monument to his defeat. His phone rang. It was an unknown number. He answered. "Hello? Harrison, it's Brooke." He straightened up, his heart racing. "Brooke, I just called to say one thing." Her voice was calm, without malice, just with the serenity of someone who had closed a chapter. "Thank you." "Thank you?" he asked, confused. "Yes, thank you for showing me how strong I am. Thank you for making me fight. And thank you for giving me the final push away from a life that was never mine." There was a pause, and he could hear the sound of a baby fussing in the background. "I forgive you. Not for you, but for me. Goodbye, Harrison." She hung up. Harrison stood holding the silent phone. Forgiveness. The last thing he expected. And that hurt more than any insult, because her forgiveness was not an invitation. It was a farewell. It was the final confirmation of his total and absolute irrelevance in her life. He looked around his luxurious penthouse, at the expensive artwork, at the million-dollar view. He had everything money could buy. But in the deafening silence of his solitude, he finally understood the truth Brooke had told him at the restaurant. He was, without a doubt, the poorest man in New York. What did you think of this story? Subscribe to the channel and click on the bell to receive all our videos. And take the opportunity to watch another amazing story by clicking on the screen. Thank you, and see you next time.